We're back for another Harry Potter video. This time, join me as I build the LEGO Gringotts set and discuss my experiences with the Harry Potter books. My name is Cooper, and this is Pop Culture. I absolutely adored the Harry Potter books, and after reading each book for the second time, I made notes about what I liked and what I struggled with. Without any further ado, let's get started. Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone was a really enjoyable experience to reread again. I thought that the book did a fantastic job at establishing the primary characters and locations seen throughout the series. However, the book also felt very rushed, like it was resolving subplots within the same chapter they were introduced in. There are also a lot of time jumps, which removes what makes the longer books much better, the character relationships and overlapping stories. What I loved. Harry is a brilliant perspective for the reader. You always want him to succeed and are happy when he does. You also seek justice when he's done wrong by other characters. Ron and Hermione are really good supporting characters that challenge Harry and each other in the right ways. And the descriptions of the castle and the outside world really help with the immersion into the book. What I struggled with. The book is very short, and it skips through the school year very quickly, meaning we don't really get to spend that much time with the characters and their experiences at the castle, at least experiences that are meaningful. Hagrid feels very stupid in the book in comparison. He's a good guide for Harry, but once he isn't needed, he becomes extraordinarily lazy and untrustworthy. There's not a lot to comment on because it doesn't challenge me as a reader, and my expectations. It's very simple but introduces a complicated narrative. Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets is another really good book. It does well at re-establishing itself and the world it created from the first book, but makes the stakes a lot bigger. It also gives certain characters defining moments that begin a long series of developments throughout the series. There are some moments in the book where the momentum doesn't carry through entirely. A good book will hook you and drag you for another 60 pages before you can put it down. I didn't have this with this book. However, I did enjoy reading it chapter by chapter. I think it flowed a lot better than in the first book. What I loved. The mystery of the Chamber of Secrets is a lot more engaging, and the several clues surrounding it are genuinely interesting. As stupid as he is, I thoroughly enjoyed Gilderoy Lockhart. He's just got a hilarious presence on the page which breaks up some of the more boring parts of the book. Ron was great in this book. He had a lot of iconic moments when standing up for Harry and protecting Hermione. What I struggled with. Some of the subplots didn't land. I didn't like Colin Creevey this time around. I thought his presence was quite annoying actually, and I was quite glad to see him petrified. Tom Riddle in this book feels kinda silly in comparison to the movie. He's more of an expositional device rather than a genuine threat. Also, Harry takes down the basilisk so easily. While the book did flow better than the first, I still struggled with it. From memory, Prisoner and Goblet improve on this a lot. This is another easy book to pick up and read. It's got some amazing moments and character interactions. As a sequel, I think this works really nicely, but as a standalone book, I think I would have trouble reading it. Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban was by far the most interesting book of the three so far. The length of the book helped the storylines flow a lot better and cross over to build speculation. There are a lot of red herrings in this book too, which are explained nicely at the end of the book. I think this book really shows the maturity of Harry. The fact that he shouts a lot and feels angry and protective and a need to kill for revenge really makes it feel like it's elevated in terms of character development. What this book does best is show the friendship dynamic of Harry, Ron and Hermione. It's very realistic. They fight and have disagreements, but always remain loyal to each other through the tough times. What I loved. The friendship dynamic works really well. It helps that the book spends a lot of time in classes and with our characters talking about school things, because it becomes a lot more relatable and easy to see the main characters becoming closer. I thought Hagrid worked really nicely into the story without being too overbearing. The book lets us know he's still around and doing things without making him the central focus or taking too much time away from the main intrigue to focus on him. The plot is genuinely interesting to watch unfold. It's clear that Rowling put a lot of thought into the structure of this novel, with so many overlapping plot lines that contribute to the story in meaningful ways and leave us with a satisfying conclusion. What I struggled with. I didn't like Snape at all in this book. It was so difficult to read parts of the book he was in because he's always so miserable and angry, and there's nothing more to him. He hates everyone and that's about it. I struggled to enjoy reading the last 50 pages. I think it's because once you know what happens, it loses its charm. But it just felt very rushed, and I think this begins a trend of ending books in like 20 pages when it should be more. It's hard to pinpoint exact things I didn't like about this book. Overall, it's very, very good. It's probably the most reasonable to read lengthwise, providing an entertaining story in under 500 pages. I think that maybe one of the reasons I'm struggling to rate it as highly as I did on my first read is that it's a very grounded book. Besides Hogsmeade, there's not a whole lot happening outside the castle or castle ground, whereas in Goblet of Fire and Order of the Phoenix it's a lot more world building, so it gets less repetitive story-wise when we are in different and unknown locations. Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire essentially reinforced why I love both Harry Potter and the book so much. While the novel itself is far longer than the previous three, it goes into far more detail than the others, and really allows the main plot and the subplots to be explored with great care. This book handles everything well. It builds on the Wizarding World with the Quidditch World Cup, Hogsmeade, and the Triwizard Tournament, while also feeling familiar, being in and around the Hogwarts grounds, watching our characters do homework and struggling in classes. This book doesn't do anything bad, which is probably why I like it so much. What I loved. The story is by far the best of the series. The idea of a magical tournament between schools is awesome, but because Rowling is able to expand on this with character motivations, such as Karkaroff's past, Krumm's interest in Hermione, Ron's distaste of Krumm, and Rita Skeeter's constant eavesdropping, it makes everything feel connected. Voldemort's return is truly something amazing to read. While it does feel exposition heavy, it's really cool to see his return. And through Harry's eyes, you really get to understand that there is an immense fear behind it. The ending to the book wasn't rushed, like it was in the third book. It was well thought out and every subplot had a meaningful conclusion. I really enjoyed reading about Harry in this book. He felt way more mature, and just seeing him do a lot of things really helped me engage him as a character. What I struggled with. I don't love Mad-Eye Moody or Barty Crouch Jr. in this book. I think now that I read it again, it's fairly obvious he's the villain of the book. I hate Cornelius Fudge so much, and I don't have anything else to say about it. I've praised this book before and I'll continue to do so. This is an amazing piece of literature and one that I've enjoyed reading from start to finish. Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix makes me feel awfully conflicted. I absolutely love what this book offers in comparison to the previous four, but there comes a point where it feels heavily disjointed and eventually summarised in a spell of exposition and reveals. For being 800 pages long, most of the time I felt a desire to just keep reading because I was enthralled by it, which I hadn't had with the other books. I struggle a bit with certain points in the book, which is why I'm finding it so difficult to talk about. I really do love this book. It's got some of the best day-to-day stuff of the series, but the stuff outside of Hogwarts feels out of place. What I loved. As I mentioned above, the everyday activities and lessons felt way more fleshed out in this book in comparison. I loved hearing about what the students had to do in each class, about the inspections, and the general attitude of the staff evolving throughout the novel. Although the dynamic of the trio felt different in this book, I quite enjoyed seeing Hermione take a more prominent role in the story. She didn't feel like someone who knew everything, but someone who paid attention and had everyone's best interest at heart. I think this is the first time I've read it and felt that brother-sister type connection between Harry and Hermione. Luna is in this book way less than I remembered, but every time she's in it, I'm really entertained. She has such a nice transformation from a simply bizarre and loony character to someone who you feel you can sympathise with and care for. What I struggled with. The Department of Mystery stuff felt really awful reading through. I don't remember it being this bad last time. I think it was probably writing constant action that really hurt the reading experience, because I just couldn't follow along. There are times when the novel is too descriptive. I don't really need to know every intricate detail of the auditorium and the chambers, or of what the centaurs look like. I'm linking these two together because they feel similar. I didn't like Dumbledore at all in this book. He behaved so unlike himself and gave a terrible excuse for it. I also didn't like the occlumency scenes, because they felt like a plot convenience that wasn't actually a plot convenience that was used for something completely unrelated. I still think this book is in the top 3 simply because I felt so attached to the characters and the story, but there are just some things I can't get over and which have damaged my thoughts on the book as a whole. To get to 800 pages of content is a great achievement for a story, but I think from memory Deathly Hallows does something similar with its page count, but a lot better. Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince was a way better reread experience in comparison to the first time I read the book. I was highly anticipating reading this book again simply because I wanted to change my perspective on the book, which was quite negative. In my initial read, I felt the book was disjointed with too much time given to Harry and Dumbledore. However, I now can recognise the brilliant balance between the Voldemort and Hogwarts storylines, while still reminding us of other stuff occurring in the world without ever leaving the school. What I loved. Finally, the book gets involved with some relationship stuff. It's great seeing the will they won't they scenario with Ron and Hermione, although it feels quite evident by the end of the book that they are together. Harry and Ginny's relationship was also a lot better for me this time, as it felt like a natural progression rather than just happening. I like that some secondary characters get more time to shine. Katie Bell is actually an important plot piece, which is nice, and even though she's only in it for Ron's character development, it was still nice to see Lavender Brown get more mentions. Although I knew who the Half-Blood Prince was and was thoroughly entertained and shocked by its reveal the first time I heard it, I still enjoyed watching the trio try and figure out who it was. What I struggled with. I thought it was odd that Dumbledore used random students to pass notes to Harry. I feel there could have been a better way that didn't feel as weird. There is one chapter in which Harry almost kills Malfoy, does detention with Snape, misses the Quidditch final, and finally kisses Ginny and feels euphoria, all within about 20 pages. This is my least favourite part, because it almost feels like Harry didn't have severe actions for his consequences. Perhaps he was even rewarded for them. Malfoy's quest, while making sense, didn't resonate with me very much. I didn't like that Harry knew from the get-go that it was him. It would have been more fulfilling if he suspected someone else. Half-Blood Prince was a very good read and one I'd happily pick up again. It much improves on the flaws of Order of the Phoenix, but doesn't ever reach the height of the moments from books 4 and 5. Otherwise, I'm glad I reread it, and now I have a new appreciation for it, and what this book sets up for the finale. Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows has been and always will be a solid book. I have now picked it up 3 times, and each time I have significantly enjoyed it. Each reread has gotten better for me as well, as I've been able to follow the subtle story elements more closely. This book does a great job with creating a story that feels unique, yet satisfying for readers, going to locations and interacting with characters that are of legacy status within the Wizarding world. It also allows the whole series to come full circle and leaves me with a genuine feeling of satisfaction in the final words. What I loved. Harry is really good in this book. He's the perfect character to follow in this specific story, whereas I feel in other books, other characters could have been utilised more. I love how we see Harry struggle against great odds and express emotions of tragedy and despair while still remaining brave. Dumbledore is also used very well in this book. I enjoy that, given he has been the purest character for each of the books, we get to see some of his flaws and explore his past, which is full of heartbreak and stupidity. More so, I think it's excellent that Harry has a sense of doubt and mistrust in Dumbledore, as he doesn't want to believe what he is discovering is true. As mentioned before, the book really nails wrapping everything up in a satisfying way. Almost every character gets a mention and is doing something to help fight. Every location has had an impact on Harry's past, and it's really nice to see that as we venture to these places, Harry has recollections of his first time at these settings. The story and importance of the Deathly Hallows themselves was something I paid major attention to this time, and was highly impressed with how they were incorporated. Of course, they only enter the story at the halfway mark, but serve as a great parallel for the main Horcrux story. I will stand by the fact that Kreacher's Tale is the best chapter in the entire series. It changes the entire perspective of Kreacher and paints him as a tortured hero with a silent vendetta. It's perfectly written and made Kreacher incredibly important to the story. What I struggled with. I didn't find many issues with this book, but I don't very much like Voldemort. It's amazing that he's got so many mentions in it, but I feel that the more I read of him, the less intimidating I find him. He now seems a bit goofy. The whole Master of the Elder Wand bit was silly and is very much like Bo-Katan winning the Darksaber on a technicality. I just can't get behind it. The fact that Harry is related to so many historical figures and grew up in the same place as so many famous wizards and witches just seems off to me. It makes him feel less normal. Deathly Hallows was a great book and a fitting finale to the series. I probably won't pick it up again for a while, as I feel I need to read the whole series again before sitting down to read it. It can't really be read as a standalone book because so much of its content relies on the reader knowing what happens in the previous 6. Regardless, I had fun and was satisfied with the outcome. And those are my thoughts on the books. I feel at this point in time that it's unfair to rank the books. I definitely have my favourite, which I feel you can figure out by my descriptions, but I don't think that there is a bad book. I loved my reading experience and hope that someday in the future I'll be able to sit down again and reread it in a new way. If you've liked this video, I'd greatly appreciate it if you were to subscribe to the channel. If you want more Harry Potter content, give this video a like and stay tuned for future uploads. This has been Cooper, and thanks for watching.